Welcome to Beyond the Business Card podcast.
I don't think you can influence anyone if you don't give them a piece of you.
Leopold Ajami helps individuals and organizations unlock their potential. In this episode, you'll get practical insights on how a philosophical mindset can improve business decisions, why emotional intelligence is a game changer for leadership, and how to build resilience and keep growing as an entrepreneur, even when things get tough.
If you start a business that does the same thing as everybody else, you're not an entrepreneur.
Hey Leopold, thanks for joining us today. Now, I've had the privilege and honor of knowing you for quite some time as a client, as a friend, as a mentor, as a coach, lots of different ways I've got to know you. And I want everyone to get to know you today. So let's kick this off by asking you, Leopold, what has led you to becoming the entrepreneur that you are today?
Hi first. That's a big question. I don't know if I have the right answer. But I think I've formed a specific kind of philosophy that I live by now. And it comes down to this. Never let the pain or the struggle takes more than it deserves. And I've learned this because as an entrepreneur, you have to go through a lot of pain, a lot of struggle, right? And what I learned is you shouldn't let that struggle take a toll on you more than it deserves, right? So you should know when to stop. So that's the first one. And it sounds philosophical, but I think it's very powerful because it changes your mindset. It changes the way you see things. And it allows you to keep going while still having this view that life is good, and I wanna pursue it for the best way.
Okay, that's interesting. So pain has shaped you in many ways, is it?
Yeah, of course. I think it. I mean, I know it for you as well. Like pain is an activator, but so many times we let pain take over. Not just pain, a struggle and the hardship and not knowing what you want and starting a business and, it's all mess. You don't know how to uncover that message out of that mess, right? And so it's a process. But the question is, how long will you that struggle take over you? I think that's a very key question for me, at least.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've always struggled with as well. Is how long and how hard do you take the pain for before you A, give up, B, look at other options, or C, I guess just keep on running with it, believing that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
it's a real tough one to know when to stop. And I think I know from conversations that we've had before. I'm sure the other people would be thrilled to listen to this. Like we've all been through experiences where deep pain has kind of shaped us. Like you've had experiences in your career in advertising. Yeah. I've had mine in recruitment. Some of it within my control, others, were completely out of my control. What's, I suppose, what in your career to date, what sort of moment would you say has defined the journey so far for you and led you to where you are now?
I wouldn't say it's one moment.
Yeah.
There are accumulations of moments, and I think more importantly, what do you do with these moments, right? Or like how do you take that moment and do something with it? You learn from it. You seek advice. So I think all of these accumulation makes you who you are today. One of the things I always say, and I share with my client, is what you build builds you. Sorry. What you build builds you. So if you're building a business, that process builds you, right? If you're building your character, you're starting to understand your virtues, and your values. That process builds you in return. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's one moment. There's one we can talk about, but I wouldn't say that's the one.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think actually the moments that have helped define me aren't just that one moment within business, but they go way back to family life. They go upbringing. I think those. In fact, quite a lot of the things that define my insecurities and I think the fear that sort of drives me now come way back from when I was a little kid, right? That still sort of haunt me or in my life today. That I suppose, depending how high or low they're dialed up, defines how my day or how my week's gonna go.
And think about your children. Do they, and thinking about them, help you in your work, in your life, and how you conceive your business?
Yeah, I think Absolutely. Like, I often think about perhaps because I've just reached the ripe old age of 45, right? That I'm often now thinking about legacy. I'm often thinking about, my God, like when the kids are older, what are they gonna talk about? Like, what are they going to say their dad did? And what are they going to, I don't know why I've started thinking about that, but this school playground chat, or, chats around the bars when they first get going out, and someone says, hey, what does your dad do? And how would they summarize or define that?
Yeah.
I think because I'm probably harping back how I used to summarize and define it, which was incredibly complicated with my dad. But yeah, that they define me a lot. I think also I'm acutely aware that I'm quite responsible to be the sort of the breadwinner at home. And that, I suppose, from a safety net perspective, I've always got that in my mind. But you're a dad as well. I know that your daughter's sort of drives you and is your main motivator in many ways, shape or form.
Yeah, I mean, here's something interesting. I too think about legacy, and specifically from a character perspective. Like, how will I stand and lead my life in a way that will inspire her? But not just legacy, learning. Selfishly now I'm learning from my daughter, and I shifted my mindset to, I'm not just a father, I'm a student, and I want to discover the world through her eyes. You see, because that world I forgot.
Yeah.
And that world is what would inspire me in my business, in my life, in my, actions and values and all of that. It's an absolutely amazing lens from, you say, oh, let me become the learner in that process of parenthood. So
you see, that's one of the things I love about you, is how you can, it makes complete sense, right? And I think there's a part of me that goes, I would absolutely love to do that. Okay. But there's another part of me that thinks, while I'm doing it, I've also got my mind. I find my mind very hard to sort of separate and think about emails, what my wife's going to say to me, what this is, but you've always had this skill and ability to zone in and do that.
Yeah.
But don't you find it hard to do that when you've got the real life kind of blurring the lines or infiltrating your mind?
Well, to me, that's real life.
Wow.
Real life is a process of continuous observation and curiosity, and you need to find something so interesting to inspire you. And for me, my daughter is an inspiration. I think there's nothing special about me, but there's something very special about the system that I follow. So I'm very systematic in my approach. So for example, I'll give you an idea. I have this Notion table and a specific framework that I follow, and I do this process every single day. And I highly recommend it for everyone, which is every day I say, something happened with me and my daughter. Okay, I write that observation. It should be the most trivial observation. I don't care, right? And then I ask myself, what could I learn from it? I spend 5 to 10 minutes every day. I write that down in one line. And then I ask, what problem would this help me solve? And there might be disconnect between what I'm observing and the problem that I'm trying to solve. But suddenly I'm training myself every single day to observe, to identify a problem, to infer a lesson. Now that's a brilliant system, right? So if you just follow that, you become a student of life, of your daughter, of your children, what have you, but also you're training your mind to make seemingly unrelated connections. And I think that helps me a lot with my work and my clients. And so yeah.
So we have daughters of quite a similar age, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to you.
How did they go?
Yeah, they are. But I also have a daughter who's 9 coming on 14, it feels like. Okay. So I know the age, I know the age that your daughter's at right now. And I think it's quite easy to sort of look at the world, look at sort of their innocent eyes, look at the world in a slightly different way than we do. However, I'm going to be intrigued to see as your daughter gets older and perhaps becomes, you go into battle a bit more. She looks at the world through a slightly different set of eyes, perhaps questions you a lot more, perhaps doesn't want to listen to you, perhaps, at the moment it's very easy. Papa says this and, she looks at things and can say the most wonderful, imaginative things, not a cynical bone in her body.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Change. And it'll be very interesting to see your notes, to see what that looks like and how much you've learned from her.
I'm sure she'll tell me, Daddy, stop talking about stop include me in your stories and your talks. And I'm sure about that.
Yeah.
I'm benefiting from what I have now. But it's going to change. I know.
It's funny because when I do the school drop off, I've got my youngest daughter. She's exactly like, she's like, Daddy, and I'm telling her stories. She's like, wow. And the other one says, you cringe. Leave me. Yeah. So anyway, it's great the way you explain that. And I think, that's where we get a real insight into your creative mind. And the way I always love our conversations because, you immediately give me a viewpoint of the world or a situation that I wouldn't have considered or reflected on. Yeah. But that stems back, a lot of this, I guess, stems back from your creative background that you've had, and I think for the benefit of the audience, it's probably worth just for them to understand what's led you to the journey now where you run your own business. And perhaps you can tell us a bit about that as well. But you're a creative that's moved into becoming a coach, a published author, and obviously you teach people now how to present themselves on stage, as well as kind of coach people how to, I guess, perform better in business. And well, you can go into details on that. But let's go back to your roots.
Yeah. So my roots started in advertising, which is a word that I'm in love with, and I'm still in love with, despite seeing that the industry hasn't moved forward a lot. But I remember I used to buy interview books of, these legendary ad men, and just read them and just, understand how. I have a book about how the best copywriters plan their writing, not write, just how they plan, what kind of pen they write. So I was obsessed. So I started in that world as a creative director. I worked as a strategist. But I always felt there's something missing. And I always loved philosophy. And I saw there's a big connection between creativity and strategic thinking and philosophy. So when I started studying philosophy, I was like, that kind of thinking is related to this kind of philosopher, and that kind of creativity or method of coming up with ideas is coming from Aristotle, and I was fascinated by that process. And I think this led me to start integrate. And that's how I think of myself, as an integrator. I like to take from here and there and come up with something new. So after advertising, I had my own agency for a while.
In advertising and the whole 360, but after that I decided that I need to change. So I would say part of me loved to be an educator, and I always done that in my career as a creative director. For example, I used to not just direct my team, but actually sit with them and educate them and train them and learn from them, And I was like, I love that word. And now that I have, an education in philosophy, I studied also behavioral economics and, design thinking. And I was like, what can I do with all of these? So I decided to start an academy, targeting leaders to help them build the foundation. To help them have a specific point of view, design a specific point of view so they become thought leaders, to be more persuasive and influential using the science of influence, and to rock the stage using public speaking. And that's what I did. Okay. So there's sounds like there's three core parts to your business there that you said. So rock the stage, understand the art of persuasion. And what was the first one, sorry?
So public speaking, persuasion, and thought leadership.
Okay.
Which are all interconnected, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a thought leader, you have to be a good thinker. You have to be persuasive and influential. You have to be a good speaker. So it ties together.
Okay. And it flows very well from your previous career in advertising as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, and you're, just so everyone's clear, where have you, in terms of, you're from Lebanon, right?
Yes.
And you've worked across the GCC.
Yes.
So you've worked in the UAE, Saudi. And back in the UAE. Is anywhere else that I've missed?
No, mainly I started in Saudi, then came to Abu Dhabi and then Dubai. And now I work globally with clients in the US and Europe, and of course in GCC.
So how did you manage to pick up clients globally from working sort of predominantly mostly in the GCC then?
Yeah. Well, back in the days when I was studying philosophy, I built a whole network of intellectual people, and I started doing workshops on philosophy. So that was my starting point. And this led me to build another network of people all over the world. And then when I started doing the public speaking, and that was a pain point because most intellectuals and academics, they have great ideas, but they're terribly boring, right? They go on stage and I just witnessed something a couple of weeks ago. Someone started their talk by saying, today I'm going to talk about a very, very important idea that can shape the future, but please excuse me, it's going to be boring. I'm like, why? Why should great ideas be boring? They should be exciting. So that's how I started. So I started with that niche, right? Intellectuals, philosophers, educators who have great ideas, scientific ideas, but don't know how to present themselves. And then I, started scaling from that end.
I think a lot of, I know a lot of very confident business owners. I know a lot of the successful people, but when you ask them to go on stage, for whatever reason, I know people that are very comfortable in front of camera, but when you ask them to go on stage, they shrivel. They're absolute. This is when imposter syndrome seems to hit them hardest. I think we were talking off camera a while ago. We were just saying, if you were to sit in a room and have 500 people present to you, that you would be absolutely blown away by the audience, the size of the audience that's willing to go there and watch you talk. Yet in a digital world, and for many people, they look at 500, the number 500, and they think it's small. They think it's insignificant. And so it's very...
Give me more likes.
Yeah, give me more likes. Harvesting likes is what we said. So tell me, what have you found from working with, no doubt, some very successful entrepreneurs and some very successful sort of executives? What have you found that some of the people that are afraid of when they go on stage, and what do you specifically need to work on? Like, obviously, you're going to go give me specific names here. It'd be interesting to understand the process that you go through, and I suppose to give some value to the audience as well as to what they can do to perhaps improve their public speaking.
So let me put it this way. The most undervalued skill ever is thinking. Most of the times we go on stage or we prepare for our talk without really thinking about it. So the fear is very psychological, is coming from that knowledge that I don't know really what I'm talking about. And you'll be surprised, even the, people, top CEOs, they have the main points they want to talk about, but they haven't really grappled with the ideas. They haven't really thought them through, right? And that's the number one cause why they shrivel when they go on stage, because it's not part of it's not part of the fabric of their minds, right? They're just putting point after point. So I believe that the fear of stage is a result of structuring your ideas. If you don't know how to structure your ideas and think it through logically, you're gonna feel afraid. So there are so many reasons why you would feel afraid. One, the number of people and all of that, but primarily from my experience, and I see it over and over, lack of structure.
Interesting with the point you've brought up then is, do you think they're trying to wing it a bit as well? Do you think there's a lack of preparation behind it? Or do you think it's preparing in the wrong way?
Well, someone once told me, no matter how much you practice, if you practice in the wrong way, you'll only get better at getting worse.
Yeah.
I love it, right? And I think that's so true. It doesn't matter how you practice. What matters is that you have the right structure, and if you don't, that's something you have to learn, right? So what's the structure? How do you follow a specific structure that gets your point across? That's the secret, which is very simple.
Yeah, I think a tip we can give everyone is when you and I worked together, and the first time I went up and you asked me just to go and say, present this idea, how would you do it? And you asked me to roll with it.
Yeah.
And I remember I stood up and I went, hi everyone, I'm Justin and I'm here today to talk to you. And you were like, stop there. You don't need to introduce yourself. Like no one wants to talk. Like I think the other example you gave me is, people come on stage and they talk about the weather. I mean, it's not like people have gone to listen to you talk for a weather report.
Yeah, it's a weather report, right? I don't care.
So how would you recommend? I mean, because I think the opening line, I think that is what you are the master at.
Yeah.
And there's some really good examples that I wanted to talk about here. But how would you recommend people tend to open up, their speech, their talk?
Yeah.
What advice could you give to people that will really sort of be quite impactful and I suppose break the ice?
Yeah. So first, you have to structure your main points. Once you structure your main points, you ask yourself, how can I do a creative opening that would hook my audience? It would show them that I'm interesting and worthy of your attention, and that immediately will lead to the main points, right? Why? Because people in the first 7 seconds, they will decide whether they like you or not. First 30 seconds, they will say, I'm willing to give him my attention or not. So there are many ways you can open your talks. You can open with a bold statement. You can open with a question, a reflective question that makes them think. You can open with a quote from someone. You can call back to a certain stories. Like one of the things I like to do is learn from my environment, right? And see, this is happening, that's happening. And then come on stage and tell them a story that somehow they witnessed in the conference, for example. It's a callback story, right? So there are so many ways, and you can get creative. We can talk if you want, like some of the ideas where you can get.
I think some live examples would be pretty beneficial. So you told me an example where I think you were last. Was it you were last on stage? And beforehand, there was a speaker on stage and he was somewhat confrontational. The flow, there wasn't really a good energy in the room. And so you went on stage and, well, you can finish off the story now.
Yeah. So I had my opening ready. Right? And I think you should always have your opening ready, but you should have the space awareness to understand what's going on in the room, right? And I noticed that people felt like failures. So what I did is, after being introduced, I went on stage and I tripped on purpose. And the audience gasped, like, and while still on the floor, I looked them in the eye and I said, never mistake falling for failing. And they went nuts. I got standing ovation after, 5 seconds. Why? Because they felt exactly what I'm saying, and they saw that there's a big difference between failing in something and falling, right? And so that's one of the creative openings you can do.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. And you've got a famous saying as well about what we do backstage impacts on stage. I just ruined it for you. What is it?
What you do backstage puts you on stage.
Yeah.
This line, what I call a power line. Think about yourself. What got you here to this stage of life? I forget public speaking. What got you here?
Everything that happened backstage, everything that happened beyond the business card, as they say. Yeah,
exactly.
Everything that decisions. I mean, I've always said that there's a butterfly effect with me on a decision that I made of going to Honduras. I think I told you about when I went to live in Central America. So I think a lot of the things that have led me to Dubai and to having an international business come from that moment I had in London, feeling a bit sad and fed up of moving to Latin America and being brave enough to make that decision. And everything that's happened in my life has really been a knock-on effect of making that one decision. But I'm sure paths go back much, much further. You're completely right.
But I think what put you on stage is not just having a past. We all have a past. It's that you managed to integrate the learnings from the past, right? And you were asking people questions. I know you love seeking advices and mentorship and coaching, and few leaders have that, right? You are a very coachable person, and that's what puts you on stage, because you're willing to go and study the process backstage and integrate your learning and tap into your past and analyze and do all that work. That's the backstage process, you see? And few of us wants the spotlight on stage, or most of us wants the spotlight of the stage, but not the work backstage, right? And that's what makes a difference.
And are the people that you work with, and to most, that's interesting, because I know you work with individuals and corporates, right?
Yeah.
So I guess, do you work with some people who are forced, in some ways, kind of forced to work with you, i.e. the corporate wants you to make sure their executives have a voice?
Yeah.
And I imagine you've got the people who perhaps choose, who know they want to do it, but don't think they're good enough.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to know the difference between the two, actually.
Well, some people change their mentality. So those who are forced, quote unquote, forced to work with a coach, they start with, being skeptic. But my method is to hold their, to talk to their team and ask them, you have to evaluate whether that person is getting better. It's not up to me to say, oh, this leader is becoming better, but the team. So I create a report for the team to say, he's getting better. And when the team starts seeing difference, that leader would feel great because, oh, they're seeing that I'm being different. I'm more influential. I'm more inspirational. I'm helping them become better, and they're helping me become even better. So that's my approach. But I have to tell you, sometimes I work with people and I tell them after a couple of sessions, I can't.
This ain't happening.
This ain't happening. I try to recommend someone else, but it's hard. It's hard, really. And I have to be honest. It's so hard to find people who are coachable, especially in the Middle East. I don't think we still have. So there's two problems. One, we don't have that awareness, but also the word coach is becoming too trendy. I'm working with someone now. She's a fascinating lady, and she told me something. I know she'd be smiling if she heard that. She told me, "You're not a coach." I'm like, "Yeah, fine. I can be a trainer." Yeah, no, you're not a trainer. You're not a coach. I'm like, "What?" She's like, "I'm gonna start calling you Gandalf." And you told me that once, and I love that, because you called me that once. But now she calls me Gandalf, and in her mind, which is precisely the role of a coach, I'm not the hero of the story. She is. I'm the guide. I help her go onto that journey to achieve her goals. And I think that's a very important distinction, because all great leaders are guides who were once heroes. All great leaders are guides who were once heroes. You are a hero first, and then you reach a point where you become a guide for your team. Your team are the heroes. That's how I like to think about it.
Being a leader, it's one of those jobs that not many people. I think a lot of people fall into leadership for a start as well.
True.
And a lot of what you learn to become a great leader is just from the different experience, different reactions and responses people have. I remember you telling me a story, quite an interesting story, where you were. I think it was back in your creative days, where you had to. Were you in Saudi, where you had to win a pitch, and you basically had to win a pitch, and I think if you won the pitch, you were going to get a certain salary and you get a certain reward from your boss.
Yeah.
But I won't kill the story, but you were very single-minded in your approach to this, and I know you learned a big lesson about leadership and running a team from that. Could you share that example?
I love that story, even though it's it's a black mark on my career. But I love that story because I learned a lot from it. And I think that's important, because sometimes we fall into leadership, but we don't know the method to lead. And leadership is a method, right? So briefly put, this agency, the CEO told me, I'm willing to pay for what you're asking for, which I asked for a lot, but I have one client on pitch and I want you to win it. I said, okay. I went to the agency. The team weren't that good. And I started, shouting sometimes. I created enemies. I'm like, I'm the boss. I'm going to win that pitch no matter what. And I won the pitch and I got the salary and I lost the people. You know, so I learned my lesson there. And now I always ask myself, if only I spent 2 days, 3 days just listening to them. Why you're frustrated? Why you're not doing a good job? Because later on I learned that they had a terrible boss before me, right? And now the moment they saw me, they're like, another terrible boss. So definitely they're not going to perform, right? I didn't listen to them. That's a life-changing lesson for me.
Do you think as well that if you'd have explained to them your reason and rationale behind why you were behaving, why you were, that you were trying, you know, that you were just have been open and said, look, you know, I've got an opportunity to if we smash this, I've got an opportunity to bring forward my career, and that means a lot to me, and just was completely honest as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that they would have come along with you?
No.
Okay.
Knowing what I know now about the science of influence and persuasion, no.
Because that would have benefited you, not them.
Exactly.
Okay.
People want to be heard. People have problems and they want you to help them solve it. So they don't care about my salary and about my, you know, opportunity. Ambition. Yeah. Now, later on, I managed to befriend many of them. And they know me for who I am, truly, right? But it took a while, you know, and I lost a lot in the process. But I don't think there's any other way. You should talk to them, listen to them, help them, and they come first. I'll give you another quick example. One of the trend back then in my world of advertising was you work on a specific pitch, but also you have to be proactive to work on award-winning ideas, right? Look at the dichotomy. So you don't work for clients on award-winning ideas, you work on proactive ideas for awards. And I went into that jive, you know, many times. I was like, yeah, we need to work creative ideas for awards. We need to win awards, you know. Why?
What for?
What for? And winning awards by, you know, by whom? By people from my industry. I want to win awards from the audience, right? Not even the clients. The audience are the one who will give you the award. So these are hard-learned lessons for me, you know, like stop that thing, award. I don't know. For me, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I've always, I mean, our business recruits into the marketing, communications, creative world. So I've always, you know, been aware of what people's desire and need and want for awards. An interesting observation I've made in the 14 years that I've had the business is, I think a few years ago, particularly in the Middle East, there was a real passion to try and drive to get these awards. It was almost like it was kind of it would help shape the Middle East's identity as who they were as a creative landscape. It was this absolute, and as if they won the awards, then it kind of endorsed the region, right? I think now, as time's flowed on, and to be fair, the region's picked up quite a number of awards now, but I feel like the relevance of them, I think in some ways people are a little bit embarrassed by the need to backslap. And also sometimes I think they can come up a lot of the work that's put forward for awards, maybe not a lot of people know this, but a lot of the awards that are submitted, this work that's never really been used.
That's what I'm saying.
Which is just bizarre.
It's bizarre. And I don't want you to hire me because I won an award. Right?
Yeah.
Especially in the creative field. It's a very collaborative work, right? So who came up with the idea? Who executed it? Like, there's a whole chain. So it's very complicated. I like the awards. They're nice, you know, celebration. I want to celebrate the good and the beautiful and all of that. But don't judge me based on the award. And definitely internally in a company, I don't think that's a good strategy to be focused on the awards. Now, from another perspective that we learn from influence is that people are more likely to hire you if you won so many awards, right? People are more likely to trust those who have authority. So sometimes it's a conundrum.
A badge of honor that you
it's a badge of honor. It's like when you see someone wearing a white coat, right? You don't ask, oh, doctor, show me your certification.
Right? You just assume.
You just assume, you trust them, and
Yeah.
So
we went through a stage in the recruitment business when, actually, ironically, I think some of those awards are behind me now.
yeah,
Where I think, again, this is in the early days of the business, where it was real ego chase for me. It was like, right, we're going to enter every single award. We're going to try for absolute. I mean, I remember we went out and partied when we won best website. And it was like, that was wow. I called up my mom and told her. I mean, now I just wouldn't give a monkey's about that, because ultimately it didn't. The only person whose ego stroke was mine. It didn't really help the business. It didn't really help the team, and it was a lot of effort for I felt quite a small insignificant reward.
My award now is seeing my client rocking the stage, seeing my client in a podcast or an interview or on LinkedIn proposing a new point of view that is challenging the convention. That's my award.
Yeah.
I always say the satisfaction I gain from coaching someone is immeasurable, but it gets amplified when I see that someone succeeding. So the same thing should work for any other.
And testimonials, I'm sure, as well. People, that's greater, badge of honor than someone saying the value they took from working with you, I'm sure.
Sure, of course. But I work with so many people who, let me put it this way, who don't give me testimonial because of the nature of their work, their seniority, the kind of the industry. And I'm totally fine with that. But, I get the award when I see them doing great on stage, persuading, you name it. So
cool. And something I want to touch on, because I think it's really important. I think a lot of people listening to this, they're entrepreneurs, and they'll be interested in that thing we were talking about, leadership, but leadership whilst running a business. Now, you've had an experience, of course, of working for someone, running a team on behalf of someone, and then embarking on running an agency as well, and dealing with the highs and lows of running an agency, employing staff. I suppose being the jack of all trades that many sort of new stage entrepreneurs have found. How did you find that whole experience, and what did you learn? What was your take home from that, from a leadership perspective?
So it's funny because there's a reason why I started my company. I used to love working for international agencies. And then when I left my last job, I was like, I want to go find a better place. Okay. I didn't think about becoming an entrepreneur and starting my business. But I said to myself, I don't like CVs. I don't like portfolios. I mean, just the CV, we once talked about it. The CV, the format that we follow today, is designed 500 years ago by Leonardo da Vinci, and we still use the same format. So back then I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to define myself with a CV. So what did I do? I wrote a book that I called back then Novel Philosophy. And it's about the investigation of creativity, literature, and philosophy. Anyway, I wrote that book and I started going to different companies and agencies and saying, here's my CV. I wrote that book. And it was too radical that nobody hired me. I was like, okay, what should I do? I'm gonna start an agency. So that's how it started. I wasn't like planning and strategically doing it. No. Yeah, man.
You were unhireable.
I was unemployed. You told me once. I was unemployable. So yeah, but I did something that I say it made me back then an entrepreneur, because I don't think every person who starts a business is an entrepreneur, right? And I think that there's an important distinction here. If you start a business that does the same thing as everybody else, you're not an entrepreneur, right? I think entrepreneurs are people who sure put their financial risk at stake, but also there's something else at stake, which is novelty. Someone who is doing something new, challenging a new problem, even challenging a problem that people don't think they have. That's an entrepreneur in my, perspective. So anyway, back then what I did is I said, I don't want to start a normal agency. I want to start one that has some kind of uniqueness, which is, we don't pitch. we don't show ideas, we don't sell ideas, we sell frameworks. So we go to a client and we say, here's the framework, here's our methodology, and we're going to sell you that framework, right? And then if you're in, we can show you how it can be applied to your brand, to your ideas. And it was, radical back then. And, we also used the whole, influencer back then, the paid influencer. It was new. So we were the person who started it. It was us and another agency. That's it. So it was very successful, and it was a new model of working. So yeah.
I've always found that when you go in this region, when you go in with something quite radical and new, it's a bit hit or miss,
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't imagine how difficult that must have been to put the framework idea forward. When someone just wants, a print ad or something very basic, and you're coming in with completely radical.
I tell you, I think luck plays a role. Really, I believe in it now. Sure, luck comes when you're prepared and all of that. I believe that. But, sometimes you need just this one client to believe in you, or, and I'll be blunt here, to think that you're a genius and I'm just going to give it a shot. So many people think that, I don't understand what you're saying, but you sound intelligent, so I'm going to give you a shot. And it happened to me many times, and it worked.
God bless those people that say that.
God bless them, because and we offered value, right? But they just needed to trust us because it was a completely different model. So yeah, I think you have to risk that. And that's the nature of the entrepreneur. It's someone who goes on a journey, not just financial, but novel. That's what makes you an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you're a business person, and that's totally fine, and which is great.
And I see a lot of entrepreneurs as well that go into business or set up a business, and the sole purpose of doing it is really they want freedom. And the one thing that this business that they've set up doesn't give them is any freedom whatsoever. It saps. They become stressed. Yeah, they become employees, disgruntled employees. If you were to give them that job description, they'd say, that's not a job I want to take. And you see people burnt out and broken. And I think that's why longevity of a lot of businesses, is very small. And some people who set up business never go back to it again. And obviously as a recruiters, we see this a lot as well. What do you
by the way, that's what I loved about you and the way you work. And we talked about that a lot, because and I asked you many times, you seem so busy, but at the same time, you're going to the gym and you're enjoying your life. And I'm how do you do it? And you inspired me to start going to the gym. And I can't be grateful enough for you to do that, for doing that. But, it's how do you do it? And you're active on LinkedIn, very active. And I think, again, I would love to hear from you, what's the secret formula here?
Where do you find the time? I had this a conversation yesterday with someone, because I think you have to think, in order to find the time, you have to think about what your priorities are, right?
Yeah.
And they'll say, in doing so, there's going to be some sacrifices you're going to make along the way to free up that time, because we only have a certain amount of hours in the day, and you've got to sleep and eat. And so for me, the priority is very clearly it's family. It's the business, and the other thing really is I want to get location. I want location freedom as well. So I want to have the freedom to go where I want, when I want, and not be curtailed by anything. But what I've sacrificed in that is friendship, I feel. Because I don't seek new friends. I don't seek friendship at all. I don't. A lot of people that actively pursue a social life in order to interact. For me, the purpose behind everything really is for business and to serve my family and to serve the business, which will in turn serve my family, right? And the friends that I've met along the way really have been people that have got a similar agenda to me, and we're aligned on that, right? And the people that have fallen by the wayside have been old friends that I don't get called very often to go out for lunch by mates, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't have my drinking buddies I go and watch the football with. I don't have that in my life. Every spare second that I've got, I'm either working or I'm spending it with my wife and the kids, right? And the people that I've collected along the route have been people that A, accept that, and B, I've probably met on that business journey. So yeah.
I love that, and I've been thinking about this topic, friendship, in relation to business and life, because this is one of my highest values.
Yeah.
And I think you reach a point where you see that the value of friendship is irreplaceable. Not even romance can replace, nothing. But I'm with you. There's Aristotle differentiates different kinds of friendship, right? From the companion or the person you just trade with or you go out with for a drink or what have you. The highest level of friendship is what he calls a character friend. And it's a friend whom you share the same virtues and the same values and the same ambition. So you might not go with that person every day, but he's like a mirror to yourself. And I love that. And, seeing that from that perspective, I don't need to have, to go out with Justin every day to be my character friend. But as long as he mirrors my values and he inspires me and I can talk to him whenever I can and he can listen to me, then he can be my highest level of friends. And I love that. I think that's very inspirational.
There's a nod of acknowledgement that happens, the unspoken word where, you don't give someone grief for not replying to your WhatsApp.
Yeah.
24 hours or something like that, which I could be very bad at.
Yeah, me too.
But it's the people that chase you who get upset by that. Well, they're the ones that don't really understand. But, and what I mean by location is, I think for me, I think it's an age thing, but I really want to see more of the world. I want to see more of it with my kids at a certain age. And I want to have a job that enables me to do that as well. Our goal is to be able to live between, that Sri Lanka is dear to my heart, that I'm here, obviously here in Dubai with the kids and spend some time in Europe as well. And if we can live doing all three and I can run the business and then that's very important to me. And I think it's important for my kids to get to see something outside of the Dubai bubble that they've got as well.
That's true. But again, I think it's hard for many people. And, one of the things I always think about is how can I achieve the highest level of that, which I'm not there yet. And also how can I work with other people to achieve that? How can we build a community of people who can have that kind of lifestyle business, like that kind of, I love my business. It's, I enjoy it, but also I'm not a slave to my business, So
as a coach that I work with, and actually he summed it up brilliantly. His absolute goals in life, he wants time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. And that's his pursuit. Is that it's a monetary figure. It's actually just that it's that. I suppose they're not worried, they're not having any worries, and I suppose for me, I've met some of the most unhappiest people I've met, actually. And you meet a lot of very successful people in Dubai, have been some of the wealthiest people that I've met and some of the loneliest people. And that doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. But
me too.
Yeah.
I think you have to cultivate that mindset that every day you're waking up, and I know it's going to sound cliche, but at least that's how I live my life. It's a new day. It's a beautiful day and life is beautiful. I want to live it. And back to the pain point in the beginning. If you let the struggle of emails, of project, of pitching, of lack of money, of cash flow, you name it, take, more than it deserves, then you're going to suffer. You're not going to enjoy your day, right? And after a couple of years, you look at yourself and you're like, who am I?
Yeah.
I'm not enjoying my life.
The cheat code, I think, to waking up and feeling that happiness is getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
Because when I've not had enough sleep, sometimes,
I'm getting better.
Yeah, you're getting better. Leo and I were having a chat this morning, and I've had a couple of struggles with my sleep, and I think sometimes I could always notice when I haven't had enough sleep.
Yeah.
Because the first thing I think about is something that's pissing me off.
Yeah.
Rather than something, and it's so true. When I wake up after a good night's sleep, So I don't think about that at all. I don't think about that.
You know what's the best thing?
Yeah.
And again, this works for me. I don't know if it's going to work for your audience, but it's life-changing. When you wake up, the first thing you should do other than drinking water is read. And read novels. I'm serious. Read fiction. Because fiction has the power to transport you in another world and help you see your values or other values in action. Even if you read 30 minutes a day or 15 minutes novels, you have no idea how, because it's art, right? And art is a fuel for the mind. So if you put that fuel in the morning, you're already, and that's what I do. Now I'm reading a Western book. And I'm like, I want to know what's going to happen.
How are you doing this? You're in the gym at 6 a.m. What time are you getting up?
I wake up 4:30. I read till 5:30, and then I, go to the gym at 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
If I don't do that, you can't speak to me.
Okay.
I have to know what's happening in that book.
So what time do you go to bed then?
Now, progress, 10:30. I'm sleeping, yeah.
Wow. And getting up at 4:30.
Yeah.
Goodness me. Yeah. Wow. Well, you talked about a book, and I think it would be silly of me not to mention the fact you are now a published author. So tell us all about the book that you've written and your reason and rationale behind doing so.
Yeah, so it's called How to Hear Yes More Often. And it's a book about how to harness the science of influence and persuasion in business. So me and 7 other authors, certified under Dr. Robert Cialdini, and we're founding members of the Cialdini Institute. We said, let's come together and see how we can put all his, research and learning into a practical book for business people. So the beauty of this book is, so it's written by 8 people. It's every one of us is coming from a different industry. You have one from marketing, one from automation, one from procurement, and me from thought leadership and public speaking. And we're bringing all of these knowledge and, cases into one book. So you read it, you understand the principle of persuasion and go, oh, here's how Patrick applied it in his work. Oh, here's how Leopold applied it in his, and so you can use it in your work. It's been a fascinating journey, and the co-authors are absolutely amazing, very knowledgeable, and it's a gold nugget. That's what I can say about it.
Well, give us one nugget from the book then.
So I think the key nugget is what I titled my chapter from my perspective, which is give them a piece of you. And I've reached this conclusion because I don't think you can influence anyone if you don't give them a piece of you, right? Now, the question becomes, what's the piece, right? And it can be a piece of your knowledge, of your inspiration, of your interest. I mean, when was the last time, or think about yourself. When was the last time you looked at your team and said, I want to listen to you? I'm sure you do that. Right?
Well, there's a few of them sat in this room now, so
I want to learn from you.
Yeah.
I remember, there was a time where we were disconnected for, you were, and then when I reached out to you, the first thing I told you is, Justin, I'm fascinated because I'm seeing your team as active almost as you are on LinkedIn. Right? So you started that, you inspired them. Now they're doing that. And you're giving them a piece of you. And in return, they're giving you a piece of them. Right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the golden nugget. Now, the way I did it in the book is I create a framework. It's called the Power of Influence, PWR. So P stands for power line. We can talk about them if you want. W for worldview and R for reflection. So how can you condense your message in a power line? How can you create a unique worldview that is different from the other? And that's essential for thought leadership. And how can you build the habit of becoming a reflective thinking or thinker instead of a reflexive thinker? So that's important. How can you reflect? How can you look at life, at business, at people, and introspect? And I think, what did I learn from this?
As you do with your daughter.
As I do with my daughter.
And as your power lines, as you have, Give us another one. We've had two. Come on, we can't have it. We've got to have a third one.
Well, there's one I think I mentioned in the book, which is average, speak to your ears. Amazing, speak to your skin.
Elaborate on that a bit more.
Yeah. Well, think about it. Average speakers, communicators, leaders, all teachers, all they care about is their content, and they download that content, onto your ears.
Yeah.
And that's why you tune out.
Yeah.
That's why on Instagram when someone's talking, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just about their content. But amazing communicators, they speak to the skin. They touch you emotionally, intellectually, and literally they guide you. They touch your hand and they guide you from point A to point B, right? So when they're talking, they care less about their content and more about connecting with you, right? And I think that's what makes them amazing.
Hence the goosebumps.
Hence the goosebumps, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I struggle to think of the amount of talks that I've been to where goosebumps I actually had goosebumps hit me, because most of the time you are scrolling. It's actually what you're so true. You're so right. It's what they want. They're just what they want you to hear.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that's impactful on you whatsoever.
Yeah.
So next time I get goosebumps, I'll know that they've had a coaching session from yourself then, right?
Well, there are other people as well, but yeah, it's all about that. Seek the goosebumps.
Seek the goosebumps.
As my wife tells me, walls don't get goosebumps. So never speak to a wall,
Very true. Very true. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap this. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Thanks
for coming in for the conversation. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how's the best way to reach out?
Well, either on LinkedIn or they can jump to my website, novelphilosophy.academy.
Leopold, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.